Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the invitation. So, a very quick presentation. So, what do we mean by corneal inlays? We're talking about devices, not real lenses, because they sometimes have no refractive power. They are medical devices that get introduced into the corneal stroma, can modify the refractive, keratometric, aberrometric aspect of the corneal surface. The technique was introduced by José Barraquer in 1949. The aim at the time was not treating presbyopia, but correcting hyperopia, especially. We're now interested in using corneal inlays for presbyopia correction. Dr. Bellucci asked how should we choose our patients based on age and refraction. I took this slide from a conference of 2011 by Professor Palikaris, and patients were subdivided by age and preoperative defect. Of course, this slide is a bit busy, but it helps us understand where to place corneal inlays in relatively young emmetropic patients. They share a number of common features. They're all implanted in the dominant eye. They're all reversible techniques. So the first to do no harm. We can go back without causing any problems to the patient. They're all made in biocompatible materials. They should give an uncorrected visual acuity greater than 8 lines, and patients should be emmetropic. So I'm going to go through my slides very quickly. Here we can see the corneal inlays that are currently on the market. The first two are reflective lenses. They have addition power. They're different and they are marketed by different companies. Then we have the raindrop that has no addition effect. And the most famous and most widely used one is the camera lens based on the central opening of the pinhole. There are many publications over the last few years. Data have been published on the efficacy of the lenses. Q-focus, camera, no addition power, and increases depth of focus by using a central pinhole with no correction. It's a bit like a pinhole, 3.8 diameter, 1.5 millimeter thickness, can be introduced by means of a flap or by means of a corneal pocket. It doesn't affect far vision. It is applied in a non-dominant eye. A corrective efficacy to diopters is centered on the visual axis and has a depth of 200 micron, and visual recovery is quite fast. I've looked for recent publications. So this is 2016. Now you can see something interesting. Results are reported at 3 and 6 months, but as you can see that we can observe a loss of efficacy. 33% of patients that have 8 lines of better visual acuity in reading, and a few months later it was down to 28%, and this is from 77 to 63%. And people that have very good visual acuity are very few, as you can see on the slide. Another important observation concerns the following. We're doing surgery to solve a problem for the patient. We're really able to get our patients off their spectacles If we look at patients that are no longer dependent on spectacles, we can see a difference. And you can see the different groups of patients, but the result is that effectiveness is not excellent.
Ha un effetto, diciamo così, abbastanza visivo, abbastanza degno di
The
nota.
lens
Questa
has
forma
good
con
visual
pupilla
efficacy, better
inarcuata
tolerated in a
addirittura
dark
paradossalmente
pupil.
risulta un pochettino sfigurato
It's a
vedere
bit
molto chiaro.
less
Da
pleasant to
molti
see it on
tempo si va bene nell'esame del fotoculare
a
problemi di dilatazione
lighter
occhiale con
eye.
possibili
So
scollamenti sul oculato.
we need to explore the ocular
L'anno
fundus.
direttamente
The other
potrebbe
lens is
essere
completely
connesso
different.
a questa forma ambidisco,
Is
quindi si nota
is
questa sorta di aumento di convessità
It
centrale che parte
is
da
a
5
steeper
micrometri
lens
fino a 30
centrally,
micrometri, è una lente
from
estremamente
5
vicina ai
to
millimetri,
30 micron,
assolutamente
2
gas permeabile,
millimeter
non
thickness,
partecipa a
gas
qualsiasi
permeable,
rigenerazione
80%
retina.
water.
Anche
A
questa non ha
same
nessun potere
refraction index of the
artificiale
cornea, has no
fondamentale, ma funziona come? Andando a invertere
spherical
l'asse centrale
addition
della retina
power,
e quindi
and has a
creando quello che
stromal depth
denominiamo
between
in
130 and
presenza di
150
alterazione estetica,
micron.
negativizzando
So
le dita. Anche questa
this is the
viene messa a
situation. The
rilievo nel
lens
cambio di
is
riflesso che potete
placed
vedere circa dietro di me
by
sulle
creating a flap.
cinquantina. Qui potete vedere appunto l'effetto che induce questa
You
lente
can
a
see
una
the
fase
effect
applicativa
obtained with this
superiore
lens.
a
This is
questa
a
alta
refraction
zonale.
map
Vedete
and a
quanto
zonal
sferica
map,
questo
point zero
ombracente di questa
corresponding to the
lente
center of our
ha una
lens,
capacità, diciamo
and
così, di
has
essere
a
passivamente
refractive
obiettiva,
capacity of
riflettive
about
e quindi si sposta quindi
-4
andiamo al di là di
diopters.
quei limiti
So
che
it's over 2
consideriamo corretti,
millimeters
quindi
because I said the
si
diameter is
riduce
2
ma
millimeters.
non in
We
maniera
have the
improvvisa, non è
reduction, but
come
not
se si
suddenly, but
creasse
gradually.
una
It's a bit
riduzione
like
interditale.
creating a
Per
zone
annullarsi
of
poi oltre il
intermediate
millimetro che
vision,
introduce
and past
l'effetto
the 3
sferico
millimeters we
è la
have
stessa.
no
Vedete che
more
la zona centrale
step-like
riceve
effect of
solo
the
una parte
lens.
centrale che
So
possiamo
you can
considerare
see this
superficiale e la
yellow area
distribuire
is for
e la restante
intermediate
parte invece
vision,
corretta
and the remaining part of the cornea
classica.
provides a good
Anche qui qualche risultato.
far
Questo è
vision.
uno studio multicentrico
This is a
di autorevoli,
multi-center
diciamo, colleghi
study
europei di quest'anno di pochi,
by
eccetera,
a number
e
of
si vede
very
che si
distinguished
andiamo a vedere in alto a
authors.
sinistra
And
in
if we look
particolare, i
at
pazienti oggi
the
longevati, quindi con buona
slide on
capacità
the
visiva, a
left,
distanza anche di 6-12 mesi di
patients with
mantenimento
good
in
distance
attività,
vision after
compreso anche
12
all'interno
months,
della SLIM con traguardo, eccetera.
over 80% of them
Dopotutto bisogna
retain
accettare che
their
comunque sì,
results. But then, of course,
questo
we need to
fatto si
accept
spiega che ovviamente nel
compromises, as the
fotoculare
case is
abbiamo
with any
probabilmente meno
monocular
capacità
lens.
visiva
We
nell'occhio
may see a
dell'implantato
loss
e
of
si
visual
riduce drasticamente la percentuale
acuity
di
in the
pazienti che hanno una
implanted
buona
eye
capacità,
because we have less
almeno per
patients that
12
have
anzi 7
a
mesi
good
che di solito è
vision
la
after
media più o meno di questi pazienti
a
vive
year.
8-10 mesi,
So,
cioè del totale di circa il 40%,
so
quindi
only
è
40% of
abbastanza
patients
basso.
retain good
Queste sono
vision.
immagini che già avete visto, non so se riuscite a
These
vedere
images
questa
have already been
la
shown.
piannetta tipicamente perché si vede
This
proprio la
is the
lente
real
impiegata, quasi
life.
non si vede, viene
The
messa appunto
lens
su un
can
tetto,
hardly
così
be
dalla
seen.
prendo
It's
farvi vedere
placed
anche
under
la
a flap.
complicanza di
And
questa
I'd like to show you a
di questo
complication
dispositivo.
of this
Questo è l'effetto
implant.
di quell'occhio
This
un
is the
poco
effect on the next day, a few hours
antropometrico,
post-operatively.
riconosciuto con lo
We
spostamento della lente in
have
basso a lungo.
a shift of the lens downwards, and it
Vediamo
has
quella
to
che è la
be
nostra
corrected. Let me
esperienza in
now move
particolare
on
con
to our
prodotti che abbiamo
experience,
visto lungo
especially Dr.
reflexibili, reflessivi,
Fantozzi,
che
who's in
riguardano
the
ovviamente,
study group,
abbiamo già visto
and
nella
concerns the
relazione di
lens that I
presentazione, è una
presented
lente
at
di
the
circa
beginning
20
of the
dioptria,
session.
una zona
You
con
can
un
see
foro
the lens.
centrale che
There's a
consente
central
ovviamente di spostare
hole
l'ossigeno
for
e
oxygen to
l'idrofisico
go
direttamente. Come
through.
vedete una zona centrale plano senza
We
nessuna
have a
riflessione,
plano
questa è una
area,
zona
no
che non ha
corrective
periferia dove invece
power,
abbiamo la
and a
nostra
peripheral area or
diciamo, la nostra
ring
visione
where we
perfetta.
can
Quindi
have a
avverrete
refractive
proprio
addition
con gap circa
1.5 to
3,25
3.5 with
è
the
una lente di
gap
trova
of
trasparente veramente
0.25.
molto
It's
fine.
a
Come funziona?
biocompatible
Funziona come una lente a contatto
hydrophobic lens.
bifocale,
It
attenzione,
works
c'è una zona
as a
centrale della
bifocal
visione
lens,
all'interno e una
three
zona di
zones,
penetrazione in attività
far,
e poi una zona
intermediate,
di
and
backup
near
di al di fuori
vision.
del diametro della lente della cornea normale, praticamente
As
della
you can
visione
see
normale.
on the slide.
Risente parecchio come tutte le altre
Similarly
tipologie
to
otticali,
other
quindi ha una
lenses, it's
capacità
affected by
funzionale
pupillary
ipotrofica che invece è
kinetics,
estremamente efficace in
tends to lose
condizioni
effectiveness
mesopiche.
in mesopic
La selezione del
conditions.
paziente per tutte queste lenti, per tutte
Patient
queste
selection
tipologie
for all
è cruciale, ma
these techniques
permettetemi
is
poi al
crucial.
paziente in ogni
But in any case, the patient must be very motivated. The surgery is not always effective. You need to identify the ideal patient. So you can see the selection with all the criteria. We need to determine the dominant eye. We use the whole test. We've seen an evolution in technology. You can see a microkeratome with a kind of spur or punch to create a pocket to be used to enter the cornea and apply the lens. I had trouble using this instrument. You need to hold your breath and pray that you don't get into the anterior chamber. We had the femtosecond laser, but it was initially used for the flap and for corneal transplantation. We wanted to use it for the pockets. So what did we do? We went to a technician and had a kind of guide or a screen made for us to create the corneal pocket. And you can see the evolution. The laser automatically performs different functions as set depth, diameters, and exit angle. It's implanted halfway, half thickness, about 280 micron in the non-dominant eye. We make the pocket. The lens is left inside too, and then is centered on the visual axis. These images are a bit more pleasant to look at compared to the camera. The lens is invisible and there are no problems. You can examine the fundus. We followed about 140 patients for about a year. We started from a visual acuity preoperative of about J10. Results are not bad. You can see visual recovery in the implanted eye. Not talking about the contralateral eye that has the same preoperative visual acuity, but we see a dramatic improvement, which is maintained throughout the follow-up. And we can also see that we have an improvement in visual acuity. In bottom right, you can see even if J1, J2 total remains unchanged, we can see an increase in the number of patients showing an improvement from J2 to J1, as if there were a neural adaptation. Same for the far distance visual acuity. We have a reduction in visual acuity in the implanted eye, and the 8 or 6 lines are very, very rare, but we can see an improvement as if there were a neural adaptation. Just a final observation, this 4% preoperatively. At the beginning, we said these patients must have at least 8 lines. We have 4% of patients that didn't reach 8 lines. So why did we operate on them? Because we started off with a combined technique. We treated the hemetropic defect and created a flap, and then we created the pocket. We corrected the refractive error and then applied the lens. So they were patients and that were not eligible, but they were made eligible for surgery. That was then performed during the same session. Highly hydrophilic material. The central hall allows for metabolic turnover, 300 micron of thickness. And the keratocytes at this level are quite inert. They don't respond excessively, and the endothelium is not altered. A questionnaire to be submitted to all patients. Crucial question. Are you using reading glasses? 70% says no, 22% says less than 50% of the day. So it's 78 versus 22%. I hope I've been fast enough. As we heard this morning, presbyopia affects an increasing number of people. It is estimated that in 2025, about 60% of the US population will be over 55. We need to look for a solution. There's no clear and absolute surgical treatment. There's no gold standard. There are pros and cons for each and every technique. Using corneal inlay has been found to be effective and reversible. If the patient's not satisfied, I can go back and remove the lens without causing damage. I can also perform an upgrade. It worked for 5 or 6 years. I implanted a given power. I can remove the lens and introduce a higher power one, and we can obtain a modified monovision, preserving distance vision. So rather than longer arms are always something that we have to bear in mind.